Have you ever found yourself in a place where you had to decide between right and wrong? You had to decide between right and wrong in a person, right and wrong in a situation, right and wrong in your company, right and wrong in your family. Most of us have to make that decision every day. We have to determine what's right and what's wrong. And it's not always easy to do because our emotions often come into deciding right and wrong. When someone's close to you and they do something wrong, your emotions cloud your judgment of them. Isn't that true? When you don't like someone and they do something wrong, well, then you're very against them because clearly you don't like them in the first place. And deciding on right and wrong can put us in what's called a dilemma. We don't really know what to do. There are two options. And how do we go into the world, look at wrong and right, and then still make disciples? Because that's what we're called to do. We're not called to gather a crowd. We're called to make disciples. And I want to speak to you today on dealing with moral dilemmas, because you will face them daily. We will face them as a nation. You will face them in your family. And the Christian church, as it goes through the world today, as it faces more and more complex issues, must know how to deal with moral dilemmas. The wonderful thing is we've got scripture that we can go to, not some vague passage that we can use, but the teaching of Jesus. How many know the words of Jesus are powerful? And we can go to a teaching session of Jesus where he sits down with the teachers of the law. The teachers of the law come with just the law, that which is right and wrong, and they want to bang people on the heads with it. But Jesus comes with the spirit of the law. How many know words can be said with a spirit, or they can just be said and they can be taken different ways? Jesus, in speaking, is teaching the same law, but with a different spirit. And we can learn something from him today. How did he deal with moral dilemmas? He was confronted with one. And I'm going to read a passage of scripture. Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning, he was back again at the temple. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. As he was speaking, the teachers, so he's teaching and these guys are teaching, the teachers of the religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. Now notice what they did. They put her in front of the crowd for everyone to see. Isn't that what our world does today? Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. They was proud about it. The law of Moses says to stone her. Circle the word law, because some people live by law. Now we need to live beyond law. What do you say? Now notice here they're asking him, what do you say? They want him to answer a question, but the Bible goes on to say that they were trying to trap him into saying something that they could use against him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. Why don't you circle the word stoop down? We're going to talk about it a bit later. Very important thing. And he wrote in the dust with his finger. Verse 7, notice the spirit of the crowd. They kept demanding an answer. Some people won't let up. He stood up again and he said, all right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. Then he stooped down again and he wrote in the dust. This is the second time he's writing. Now, what is he writing? Well, verse 9 tells us that when the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Can you see the crowd is still there helpless? They don't know what to do. They've got no answers, but the oldest one is gone because he's been alive the longest. He knows just how much he has messed up. He's like, okay. Because I think Jesus wrote on the ground names of women, corners of streets, pubs, marriages. Now watch. Then Jesus stood up again. Can you see how important this is? He stooped down, then he stood up. Now he's talking. Then he said to the woman, where are your accusers? Interesting word. Didn't even one of them condemn you? Two very important words. The word accuse and the word condemn go together. No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, neither do I. In other words, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Jesus is faced with a moral dilemma. On the one hand, you've got people who uphold the law of Moses. If you are seen to be condoning her sin, you're not upholding the law of Moses. You've lost your credibility. If you now say, okay, stone her, you're siding with the law of God, but you're disobeying the Romans, because the Roman law was you couldn't touch anybody. Your law doesn't stand up in our courts. So Jesus is between a rock and a hard place. Whenever we make decisions, these 4 things come to the fore, and they will influence your decision making, and that's why we often differ with the way we make decisions. Number 1 is your personality. Number 2, the second thing is our background. Where and how we grew up will influence our decision. Thirdly is our philosophy, our outlook on life. If we're secular or religious, if we've got no belief system, we have a strong belief system. And number 4 is our experiences. What have you been through in life? You'll bring that when deciding about other people. So let's look at these 3 categories and see the first 2 are negative, the last one is positive. The first thing we can't do, and this is how people often determine moral dilemmas, is condemning. Condemning. And when something's wrong, bam, they condemn it. It's a trap of religious people, and it's also the trap of self-righteous people. People who think they've got no faults themselves. Number 2. Are you being helped today? The second thing that we tend to do, and it's just as extreme, is condoning. Condoning, it's the opposite of condemning. It's the trap that secular people fall into, and it's the trap that people who don't know Scripture fall into. Because if the one's with the head and the other one's only with the heart, what do? Well, it's very simple. Jesus did it. Number 3, correcting. Correcting. We must be correctors. Jesus comes with a perfect solution. He doesn't condemn, he doesn't condone. He doesn't just come with the head, he doesn't just come with the heart. He comes with both. And when we do it like Jesus did it, when we're able to not only receive it like when people correct us, but we can give it with grace, we'll make disciples of every nation and we'll change our society.